My wife's single friends constantly dropped unsettling hints like, "You deserve someone more exciting. Someone like your personal trainer," until I couldn't ignore it anymore. You know, there are moments in life that just rip you open, moments when a single sentence from someone you love shatters everything you thought was real. When I found those flirty texts between my wife and her trainer, my world didn't just crack, it exploded. But it was her chilling words, "Maybe I do need someone who actually pays attention to me," that truly twisted the knife. Little did she know that casual cruelty was the spark that ignited the entire, devastating implosion of her carefully constructed fantasy, especially when I calmly served her those papers just weeks later. My name's Tyler, and I'm a 35-year-old vet, running a small animal clinic in suburban Ohio. For 8 years I honestly believed Bridget, my 33-year-old wife and a dental hygienist, and I had it all. We met in college, got married young, and built what felt like an unbreakable partnership. We had our home, stable careers, and we were even talking about starting a family. I genuinely thought we were happy, truly. Then, Bridget's single friends decided our marriage was their personal fixer-upper project. It all started when Bridget joined CrossFit Apex, this super expensive gym downtown. When she told me about it, I was actually thrilled. She'd been stressed at work, wanted to get back in shape, and I thought, great, this is exactly what she needs. The membership cost a fortune, way more than we usually spent on anything fun, but I told her to go for it. Her health and happiness came first. I figured it would be amazing for her mental health, a perfect outlet for all that work stress. What I didn't see coming, what I couldn't possibly have anticipated, was the social whirlwind she was about to walk into. CrossFit Apex wasn't just a gym. It was a cult, a lifestyle brand with this incredibly tight-knit community of mostly single professionals. And they didn't just work out together. They socialized constantly. The head trainer, Marcus Rivera, was this 29-year-old former college athlete. He'd turned fitness into his entire identity. He was charming, always shirtless, and had the kind of social media presence that pulled in thousands of female followers. Bridget started going to 6 a.m. classes 3 times a week, which meant she was out of the house by 5:30 while I was still asleep. She'd come home buzzing, energized, and just so happy, talking about her new workout friends and the crazy challenges Marcus had designed. She started throwing around all this fitness jargon I'd never heard before, macros, PRs, functional movement patterns. I was genuinely happy she found something she was so passionate about. The social scene escalated fast. Within a month, Bridget was at weekend team-building events at members' houses, nutrition seminars on Saturday mornings, and group dinners after evening classes. She'd show me photos, and I couldn't help but notice it was almost always attractive single women and a few divorced guys, with Marcus right in the middle of it all, like some fitness guru holding court. Her closest gym friends became Vanessa, a 28-year-old pharmaceutical sales rep who'd been divorced twice, and Kelsey, a 31-year-old marketing director who just ended a 5-year relationship because she deserved better. Both of them were financially successful, lived in these trendy downtown apartments, and seemed to view relationships as temporary pit stops until something better came along. The first real warning sign hit me like a punch to the gut during a dinner party at our house. I'd invited some colleagues from my vet practice, thinking it would be nice for Bridget to show off her new fitness knowledge and introduce her gym friends to our established social circle. Vanessa and Kelsey showed up dressed like they were hitting a nightclub, not a casual backyard barbecue, and they immediately started making snide comments about our cozy little suburban setup. "This is so domestic," Vanessa said, looking around our kitchen with barely concealed amusement. "I can't imagine being tied down to a mortgage and all these responsibilities so young. Don't you ever want to just spontaneously travel or move somewhere exciting?" Kelsey chimed in, "You're glowing, girl. That's what happens when someone finally starts appreciating your potential. Marcus always says that people don't realize how much they're capable of until they push themselves physically." I noticed they kept dragging every conversation back to Marcus, how inspiring he was, his philosophy, his background, his plans for new gyms. Everything was about Marcus's vision, Marcus's energy, Marcus's ability to see people's true potential. During dessert, while I was in the kitchen getting coffee, I overheard Vanessa telling Bridget she was wasting her best years in suburban domesticity. "You're 33, in the best shape of your life, and you have so much to offer," she pushed. "Don't you want to experience everything before you settle down permanently?" I walked back in, tried to change the subject, but the damage was done. I saw something shift in Bridget's eyes, like she was seeing our life through their cynical gaze for the very first time. After they left, she was quiet, distant. When I asked if she was okay, she just said she was tired from her workout. Over the next few weeks, Bridget's behavior started changing in subtle, then not so subtle ways. She spent more time getting ready for the gym, wearing expensive athletic wear I didn't remember her buying, and taking longer showers when she got home. She was constantly texting during dinner, claiming it was gym coordination or nutrition accountability with her workout partners. The conversations about our future, which used to be about buying a bigger house and starting a family, just vanished. When I brought up children, Bridget would say she wasn't ready to sacrifice her progress, or that she wanted to focus on herself for a while longer. She started using this self-help jargon, talking about personal growth and not settling for less than you deserve. 3 months into her CrossFit membership, Bridget started private training sessions with Marcus twice a week. These were expensive, like $120 each, but she insisted they were necessary for reaching her goals. She'd come home from these sessions flushed, energized, but in a way that felt different from her regular classes. I started noticing changes in our physical relationship too. Bridget became critical of my own fitness, suggesting I should join the gym or at least start running with her. She'd make comments about how inspiring it was to be around people who prioritize their health and push themselves to be better every day. The implication was painfully clear. I wasn't inspiring and I wasn't pushing myself. Then the text messages started around month 4. I first noticed them when Bridget's phone buzzed during a movie, and I glimpsed Marcus's name. When I asked, she said he'd sent nutrition tips to the whole group. But the messages kept coming at odd hours, early morning before she left for the gym, late evening after we'd gone to bed, and all throughout weekends when the gym was closed. One evening, while Bridget was in the shower, her phone rang. Marcus's name flashed on the screen. Without thinking, I answered, saying she was unavailable. Marcus paused, clearly surprised to hear a male voice, then said he was calling to check on Bridget's recovery from that day's particularly intense session. His tone was overly familiar, like he was talking about something intimate, not just a workout. When I mentioned the call to Bridget, she exploded. Defensive, angry. She accused me of being controlling, said I had no right to answer her phone. She insisted Marcus was her trainer and friend, and it was normal for him to check on clients who pushed themselves hard. She made me feel like I was paranoid, possessive for even questioning their communication. The breaking point arrived on a Friday evening. Bridget came home from what was supposed to be a group workout. She was glowing, that post-exercise high, but she also seemed nervous, almost giddy. She sat down across from me at the kitchen table. "Tyler, I need to talk about our relationship," she began, her voice a little shaky. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about what I want from life. The girls at the gym have helped me realize that I've been settling for a comfortable but uninspiring relationship instead of pursuing something that truly fulfills me." My stomach dropped. "What does that mean exactly?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "It means maybe I need to be with someone who actually appreciates my potential and pushes me to be my best self. Someone who sees me as more than just a stable partner for suburban domesticity." I asked if she was talking about Marcus. She didn't deny it. Instead, she said, "Marcus understands me in ways you never have. He sees my strength and my potential. He makes me feel like I can accomplish anything." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "Bridget, he's your personal trainer. It's literally his job to motivate you and make you feel capable. That's not the same as a romantic relationship." She looked at me with genuine pity. "That's exactly the problem, Tyler. You reduce everything to practical explanations. You don't understand passion or inspiration, or what it feels like to be truly seen by someone." The conversation dragged on for 2 agonizing hours. Bridget explained she'd been emotionally disconnected from our marriage for months, and that spending time with Marcus had shown her what she was missing. She talked about feeling alive and appreciated in ways she'd forgotten were possible. When I asked directly if she was having an affair, she claimed they hadn't crossed any physical lines yet, but she was open to exploring what could develop between them. She said Marcus had feelings for her too, and they'd been discussing taking things to the next level once she figured out her situation at home. "So you want a divorce?" I asked, my voice flat. "I want to be honest about what I need," she replied. "Maybe some time apart would help us both figure out what we really want." I looked her dead in the eye. "If you want to be with Marcus, you should pursue that. But I am not going to sit around waiting while you figure things out with another man." She seemed genuinely surprised by my lack of fight, like she'd expected me to beg, to compete, to make some grand gesture to win her back. That night, Bridget slept in the guest room. I lay awake, the silence deafening, thinking about how completely I'd misread my entire marriage. The woman I thought I knew had been systematically poisoned by people who saw commitment as a cage, not a foundation. The next morning, I called my college roommate, Jason, who'd been through a messy divorce a few years back. He listened to my whole story patiently, then said something that just clicked. "Tyler, when someone tells you they want to explore other options, believe them. Don't torture yourself trying to compete with a fantasy. Jason gave me his divorce attorney's number, Patricia Chan, known for being thorough and strategic. I met with Patricia that Monday. She advised me to document everything, avoid any confrontations that could be used against me later, and prepare myself for the inevitable. Bridget would probably try to reconcile once reality set in. In my experience, Patricia said, her voice calm and firm, people who leave stable marriages for fitness trainers usually discover that attraction and inspiration aren't the same thing as compatibility and commitment. But by then, they've usually burned bridges that can't be rebuilt. I spent the next 2 weeks in a quiet, methodical haze. I gathered financial documents, changed passwords on shared accounts, and researched the divorce process. I also started paying closer attention to Bridget's behavior, her constant communications with Marcus. The texts were non-stop, and she was staying out later and later after group activities that seemed to involve fewer and fewer actual group members. Then one evening Bridget came home and casually announced that she and Marcus were going to a fitness conference together the following weekend. She said it was a professional development opportunity, and that several gym members were attending. When I pressed for details, she became vague, defensive. I did my own research. There was no fitness conference in our area that weekend. When I confronted Bridget with the truth, she finally admitted it. She and Marcus had planned a weekend getaway to clarify their feelings and see if they had a future together. I need to know if what I'm feeling is real, she said, her voice pleading. Marcus thinks we have something special, and I owe it to myself to find out. That's when I told her. My voice was calm, almost detached. I've already filed for divorce. The papers were drawn up, ready to be served. I explained that I wasn't going to stay married to someone who wanted to explore feelings with another man. And I certainly wasn't interested in fighting for someone who had already checked out of our relationship. Bridget was utterly shocked. She'd clearly expected me to be devastated, to try and talk her out of leaving, to compete with Marcus for her attention. Instead, I was calmly, methodically facilitating her exit from our marriage. You don't have to choose between Marcus and me, I said, my voice unwavering. You've already chosen. I'm just making it official. The divorce papers were served that following Friday, the very same day Bridget was supposed to leave for her romantic weekend with Marcus. She called me crying, saying she'd never intended for things to go this far, that she just needed space to figure out her feelings. I told her she'd have plenty of space to figure out her feelings as a single woman, and I sincerely hoped she and Marcus would be very happy together. It's been 6 weeks since I served Bridget with those divorce papers, and the situation has unfolded in ways I never could have predicted. First, that romantic weekend with Marcus? A complete disaster. According to Vanessa, who apparently got all the juicy details from Kelsey, Marcus spent most of the trip talking about his business goals and his plans to franchise CrossFit Apex. Oh, and he expected Bridget to pay for half of everything, including the expensive hotel and meals, which came to over $800 for her portion alone. But more significantly, Bridget discovered she wasn't Marcus's only special connection at the gym. Another member, Tiffany, had apparently been receiving the exact same kind of personal attention and motivational text messages. When Bridget confronted Marcus about it, he just coolly told her that developing intimate coaching relationships with clients was part of his training philosophy, and that she shouldn't expect exclusivity from someone in his position. Bridget returned from that weekend hurt and utterly confused. But instead of reconsidering our marriage, she doubled down on the separation. She moved into a downtown apartment with Kelsey and threw herself headfirst into the single lifestyle Vanessa and Kelsey had been pushing. She started going to expensive restaurants, taking weekend trips, and dating men she met through fitness and social media. Meanwhile, I focused on moving forward with my own life. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly straightforward, thanks to our prenuptial agreement and the fact that we had no children. We divided our assets equitably, sold the house, and I bought a smaller place closer to my veterinary practice. I also started working out regularly, not to compete with Marcus or win Bridget back, but because I realized I completely neglected my own health while focusing entirely on work in our marriage. The most surprising development was how quickly Bridget's new lifestyle started to unravel. That expensive downtown apartment, the frequent dinners out, the weekend trips, they were devouring her savings at an alarming rate. She'd also quickly discovered that dating as a 33-year-old divorced woman was a vastly different experience from the empowering narrative Vanessa and Kelsey had sold her. According to mutual friends, most of the men Bridget met were either looking for casual relationships or were intimidated by her recent divorce and obvious emotional baggage. And the men who seemed genuinely interested in commitment, they weren't the exciting, inspiring type she'd been seeking. They were stable professionals, surprisingly similar to me. 3 months post-separation, Bridget's situation deteriorated even further. Marcus had apparently moved on to newer clients, and Bridget couldn't afford those expensive personal training sessions without my dual income. She was forced to switch to a cheaper gym, and was really struggling to maintain the fitness gains that had become so central to her new identity. Her friendships with Vanessa and Kelsey also started showing serious cracks. Both women had initially been so supportive of Bridget's decision to leave me, but they became less and less available when she actually needed emotional support during the really tough parts of being newly single. Vanessa was dealing with her own dating drama, and Kelsey had started a new relationship with some wealthy older guy who kept her busy with travel and social obligations. Bridget began reaching out to me through text messages, at first about practical divorce matters, but gradually subtly, shifting toward more personal topics. She'd send photos of places we'd visited together or mention things she'd seen that reminded her of shared experiences. I kept my responses polite but brief, focusing only on necessary communications about asset division and legal requirements. The most significant change, though, was in Bridget's perspective on our marriage. Through mutual friends, I learned that she'd begun talking about our relationship completely differently, describing me as the most stable and supportive partner she'd ever had, and expressing deep regret about how things ended. She'd apparently told several people that she'd made a huge mistake by listening to bad advice from people who didn't understand commitment. Around month 4, Bridget asked if we could meet for coffee, to discuss closure and moving forward positively. I agreed, thinking it might actually be helpful for both of us to have a final conversation about lessons learned. That coffee meeting was eye-opening. Bridget looked tired, stressed, in ways I'd never seen during our marriage. She talked about how incredibly difficult single life had been, and how she'd finally realized that stability and mutual support were far more important than constant excitement and validation. She admitted that Marcus had been more interested in the ego boost of attracting a married woman than in building an actual relationship with her. I think I got caught up in the idea that I was missing out on something, she said, her voice small. Vanessa and Kelsey made it seem like I was settling for less than I deserved, but I was actually giving up more than I realized. I just listened without offering advice or trying to rehash our problems. When she finished talking, I simply told her I hoped she'd learn valuable lessons about herself and what she truly wanted from future relationships. And then I mentioned casually that I was doing well and had started dating someone new. Bridget's expression changed immediately when I mentioned dating. She asked detailed questions about my new relationship and seemed visibly upset when I described Sarah, a fellow veterinarian I'd met at a professional conference. Sarah was intelligent, independent, and shared my values about building something meaningful, rather than chasing constant excitement. By month 6, Bridget's attempts to reconnect became more frequent, more direct. She started showing up at events where she knew I'd be present, including veterinary fundraisers and gatherings with mutual friends. She'd find any reason to start conversations and would often mention how much she missed our relationship, our shared life. The final confrontation came when Bridget appeared at my new house, unannounced on a Saturday morning. I was working in the yard when she pulled into my driveway, clearly emotional, determined to have a serious conversation. "Tyler, I made a huge mistake," she blurted out before I could even greet her. "I was stupid and selfish, and I threw away the best thing in my life because I let other people convince me I wasn't happy." She went on, explaining that she'd been in therapy and had realized she'd been seeking external validation rather than appreciating what we'd built together. She said Marcus had been a fantasy, based purely on physical attraction and ego stroking, while our marriage had been based on genuine compatibility and mutual respect. "I know I hurt you terribly," she continued, her voice breaking, "but I'm hoping you might consider giving us another chance. I understand now what I lost, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to rebuild trust." I listened to her entire emotional appeal, and then I calmly explained why reconciliation wasn't possible. I told her that while I appreciated her honesty and self-reflection, she'd made choices that had permanently changed my feelings about our relationship and her character. "Bridget, when you told me you wanted to explore feelings with another man, that wasn't a mistake or a momentary lapse in judgment," I said, my voice firm. "That was a fundamental betrayal of our marriage vows and everything we'd promised each other. The fact that it didn't work out with Marcus doesn't undo the damage you caused." I explained that I'd spent months processing the end of our marriage, and I had genuinely moved on. I'd learned to be happy as a single person, had started a new relationship with someone who shared my values, and had absolutely no interest in returning to a situation where I'd always wonder if she might leave again when the next attractive option appeared. "You had a choice between our marriage and a fantasy with your trainer," I concluded. "You chose the fantasy. I respect that choice, but there are consequences you have to live with." Bridget became furious when she realized I wasn't going to reconsider. She accused me of being cold and unforgiving, said I was throwing away years of history over one mistake. I reminded her that having an emotional affair and leaving your husband for another man wasn't one mistake, but a series of deliberate choices made over several months. After she left, I felt a deep sadness, but also an overwhelming sense of relief. The conversation had provided closure for both of us, even if it wasn't the outcome she'd hoped for. It's been a year since Bridget and I separated, and 8 months since our divorce was finalized. She eventually moved back to her hometown to live with her parents and rebuild her life. According to mutual friends, she's working at a different dental practice and seems to be doing better emotionally, though she's still single. Vanessa and Kelsey are no longer part of Bridget's social circle. Vanessa moved to another city for work, and Kelsey's relationship with the wealthy older man ended when she discovered he was married. The CrossFit gym community that had seemed so supportive during Bridget's marriage crisis? It completely disappeared once she could no longer afford the expensive membership and social activities. Marcus is apparently still at CrossFit Apex, still offering inspirational coaching to married women seeking validation and excitement. I heard through the local fitness community that he'd been involved in at least 2 other marriage breakups since Bridget, always with the same pattern of making women feel underappreciated in their current relationships. As for me, I'm in a committed relationship with Sarah, and we're actually discussing marriage. Sarah brings out the absolute best in me without making me feel like I need to compete with other men for her attention or constantly prove my worth. Our relationship is built on mutual respect, shared goals, and genuine compatibility, not drama and emotional manipulation. The most important lesson I learned through all of this is simple, yet profound. When someone tells you they want to explore other options, you should believe them, and you should respond accordingly. I spent 0 time trying to compete with Marcus or convince Bridget to stay, and that decision saved me months of emotional torture and false hope. I also learned that stable, committed relationships aren't boring or limiting. They are the foundation for building something truly meaningful over time. People who view commitment as settling are usually seeking constant external validation rather than a genuine partnership, and that's just not sustainable for building a life together. Looking back, I'm actually grateful that Bridget's affair happened before we had children or became more financially entangled. Her decision to leave, painful as it was, forced me to evaluate what I truly wanted from a relationship and ultimately led me to someone much better suited for a long-term partnership. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you clears the path for something infinitely better.